The harbour grows quiet as an 18th-century sailing ship waits beyond the quay. Its dark hull rests low in the water beneath three tall masts. Furled canvas lies along the yards, and ropes form fine lines against the evening sky. From the shore, the vessel looks ordered, solid, and almost spacious. That impression changes as soon as a sailor crosses the narrow gangway. Every deck, passage, ladder, chest, cask, and beam has a purpose. Hundreds of people may share a wooden world built mainly for cargo, guns, stores, and movement. This account follows ordinary routines aboard British sailing ships in the later 18th century. No single vessel can represent every voyage or every crew. A merchant ship carried fewer people and followed commercial needs. A naval ship carried more men, more weapons, and stricter layers of authority. Weather, destination, season, and the captain all changed daily life. Yet many basic features remained familiar across the age of sail. Sailors stood watches, handled canvas, steered, cleaned, repaired, ate in messes, and slept in hammocks. The gangway leads first to an open deck filled with working objects. Boats may rest overhead or hang from strong supports. Coils of rope sit near pins and rails. Hatches open towards the decks and stores below. The masts pass down through the ship like enormous wooden columns. Each mast carries yards, sails, blocks, and many lines. These are not decorations. Together they form the working machinery that catches wind and moves the hull. A new sailor learns the vessel through repeated journeys. He climbs one ladder to the upper deck and another towards the bow. He follows a passage beneath low beams. He steps around ringbolts, tackles, and the edges of gun carriages. He notices where water gathers after rain. He learns which ropes must remain clear and which doors stay closed. The ship becomes understandable slowly, through work rather than through a single tour. Space follows rank as much as function. The captain may have a private cabin near the stern. Commissioned officers have smaller cabins or screened areas. Warrant officers, including the boatswain, gunner, and carpenter, hold particular responsibilities and spaces. Most common sailors live together farther forward or between guns. William Faulkner's period dictionary explains that a berth could mean the room where a group messed and lived. On a warship, such spaces might sit between pairs of guns. The lower gun deck shows how several purposes occupy the same boards. Heavy cannon stand along the sides during wartime service. Their ropes and carriages claim much of the available floor. Mess tables can appear between them when the guns are quiet. Hammocks hang above them at night and disappear each morning. Clothing, bowls, tools, and small personal objects must fit around military equipment. A dining room, bedroom, workplace, and fighting deck may therefore be the same place. George Anson's Voyage offers one concrete example of this crowded scale. The Centurion carried 60 guns and a crew of 400 men. Its lower gun deck was about 140 feet long. These figures belong to that ship, not to every vessel. They still help reveal the narrow share available to each person. The hull had to contain people, powder, shot, food, water, spare timber, sails, cables, and boats. Below the living decks, the ship becomes darker and more tightly packed. Casks occupy the hold in planned rows. Heavy stores sit low to keep the vessel stable. Water, beer, salted provisions, flour, and other supplies must survive months of motion. Spare cordage and canvas wait for future damage. The great anchor cables need their own dry space when possible. Every item must remain reachable without making the ship dangerously unbalanced. The smell below deck changes from place to place. Timber holds old salt and tar. Rope carries the scent of hemp. Damp clothing dries slowly near crowded sleeping areas. Food stores add traces of grain, cheese, and salted meat. A lantern gives little light because open flame is dangerous. Air enters through hatches and openings, then moves reluctantly through the deeper spaces. Calm weather can make the lower decks feel especially still. Near the bow, movement becomes sharper when the sea rises. The hull lifts, settles, and sends a quiet strain through its joints. Loose objects would slide, so sailors secure almost everything. Chests are placed carefully. Casks are wedged or lashed. Guns are held by heavy ropes called breechings. Meals require bowls and spoons that can survive a sudden roll. Even rest depends on trusting the knots and hooks above a hammock. The crew is not one undivided group. Officers give orders and keep navigation records. The boatswain oversees rigging, sails, anchors, cables, and much deck work. The carpenter watches the wooden structure and repairs damage. The gunner cares for weapons and their equipment. The cook manages the galley within the limits of stored provisions. The surgeon treats illness and injury with the knowledge available in that period. Ordinary seamen perform the repeated labor that keeps all these systems moving. Experience also creates divisions among common sailors. An able seaman knows how to steer, reef, furl, splice, and work aloft. An ordinary seaman may still be learning some of these tasks. Boys carry messages, assist with work, and learn the vessel's language. Marines aboard a naval ship support security and discipline. Men may come from different ports and countries. Their skills vary, but the ship requires coordinated action from all of them. The language of the vessel is practical and exact. Fore and aft describe direction along the hull. Port and starboard distinguish its two sides. The weather side faces the wind, while the lee side lies away from it. A yard is a horizontal spar carrying a square sail. A block guides a rope, and a tackle combines blocks for lifting. These words shorten commands when wind and water make longer explanations difficult. Sound carries differently through the wooden decks. Footsteps above arrive as dull knocks. A moving block gives a brief wooden clatter. Water passes along the hull with a steady brushing sound. Voices travel through an open hatch, then fade behind bulkheads. The boatswain's call can cut through this background. Falconer described it as a small metal pipe used to summon sailors and direct work. The ship is therefore never simply still, even at anchor. Someone tends a boat alongside. Someone checks a line against the tide. Stores arrive in casks and bundles. A clerk or officer records what comes aboard. Sailors bend sails, move equipment, and clear working spaces. The vessel is preparing to become independent of the shore. Once the harbor falls behind, every missing object becomes harder to replace. A sailor's possessions remain modest because storage is limited. A sea chest may hold clothing, sewing materials, letters, and a few useful objects. Bedding must be rolled or folded with care. Wet garments need somewhere to hang without blocking work. Personal comfort depends less on furniture than on keeping small things dry. A sound pair of shoes, a warm garment, or a clean cloth matters greatly at sea. The final shore boat pulls away as evening gathers around the hull. Oars dip and leave widening rings on the dark water. The ship's decks remain busy under a few shaded lanterns. Orders pass from one level to another. A rope runs through a block, and the gangway is drawn in. The crew now lives inside the boundaries of the vessel. Their hours will be measured by bells, watches, weather, and the constant needs of the ship. The first bell after darkness does not announce the end of work. A sailing ship must remain attended throughout every hour at sea. Wind can strengthen, a sail can tear, and another vessel can appear. The helm needs a sailor, the lookout needs clear eyes, and an officer must remain responsible. The crew therefore divides the day into watches. One part works while another part rests, eats, mends clothing, or sleeps below. Royal Museum's Greenwich describes the common naval pattern as a series of 4-hour watches. The first watch runs from 8 in the evening until midnight. The middle watch follows from midnight until 4. The morning watch continues until 8. The forenoon watch reaches noon, and the afternoon watch runs until 4. 2 shorter dog watches fill the period from 4 until 8 in the evening. The dog watches divide those 4 hours into 2 parts. One runs from 4 until 6, and the next from 6 until 8. This creates an uneven number of watch periods across the full day. The arrangement helps change the hours kept by each group. Without that change, the same sailors might always receive the cold middle watch. Alternation spreads the comfortable and uncomfortable hours more evenly over successive days. Not every vessel uses exactly the same system. Some crews divide into 2 watches, while others use 3. James Cook recorded placing the Endeavour's company into 3 watches during the voyage. Smaller merchant vessels later often used 2, called larboard and starboard watches. The exact arrangement depends on crew size, voyage, and service. The lasting principle is continuous attendance through alternating periods of work and rest. A sailor does not carry a modern clock. The ship's bell marks time in half-hour steps. 1 stroke sounds after the first half hour. 2 strokes mark the full hour, then the count begins to rise. 8 bells complete a 4-hour watch. At that point, the next group comes on deck. The pattern starts again, fitting the whole day into repeated sets of sound. The bell reaches men who cannot see the sky. Its vibration travels down the hatch and through the deck beams. A sleeper hears it among creaking timber and moving water. The sound is familiar enough to enter dreams without waking everyone. Only the next watch must rise. A call follows, naming the group and confirming the hour. Hammocks begin to move as men prepare in the darkness. Changing watch takes more than replacing one helmsman with another. The relieved officer passes information about course, wind, weather, and nearby dangers. The new lookout learns what has been seen. Sails and rigging receive another glance. The compass remains visible inside a box with a light. Falconer called this case a binacle, now usually written binnacle. Its protected compass helps the helmsman maintain the ordered course. The officer of the watch observes both ship and sea. He checks whether the wind shifts across the sails. He watches clouds, swell, and the position of other vessels. He orders small changes before they grow urgent. A sail may need easing when a squall approaches. A course may require adjustment as wind pushes the hull sideways. Calm routine rests on many quiet decisions made before danger appears. The helmsman stands where he can see the compass and hear instructions. Falconer distinguished steering from conning the ship. The sailor at the helm controls the rudder. Another responsible person directs the course and watches the result. Large wooden vessels respond slowly compared with a small boat. Wind, wave, sail balance, and current all influence the line through the water. A lookout occupies the bow or another assigned position. At night, the horizon may be little more than a darker line. Moonlight can reveal a sail, a headland, or breaking water. Fog narrows the world to sound and damp air. The lookout reports bells, lights, land, floating wreckage, and changes ahead. Most hours bring only sea and sky, yet attention cannot be relaxed. The watch also performs ordinary deck work when conditions permit. Lines are coiled clear of feet. Chafing gear is checked where rope rubs against wood. Pumps may need working as water gathers below. A sail can require a small repair. Salt deposits and loose objects are cleared. These tasks prevent the deck from becoming disorderly during a sudden maneuver. Weather can interrupt the expected rhythm at any moment. A cry of all hands brings the resting watch up as well. Sailors may shorten canvas before a stronger wind. They climb into the rigging while the deck pitches beneath them. Once the work is complete, the off-watch men return below. Their 4 hours of rest have become shorter, but the schedule continues. The log gives written shape to this passing time. Falconer described a logbook divided into 4-hour watches. Its entries record circumstances worth notice. Cook's journal also preserves course, distance, wind, sail, weather, and stores. Such records were practical rather than literary. They helped officers understand the vessel's progress and account for decisions, provisions, and events. At noon, navigation and daily record keeping briefly come together. When the sky allows, officers observe the sun. The result helps estimate latitude and correct the ship's reckoning. The log for the previous period is reviewed and copied. Noon can begin a new sea day in later practice. Yet the crew below may experience it simply as another bell within another watch. Rest between watches is broken into pieces unlike sleep on land. A sailor finishing the first watch at midnight may sleep before returning near dawn. Another sleeps early, then rises for the middle watch. Meals, cleaning, drills, and all-hands calls can reduce the time further. Even a nominal 4-hour rest includes going below, changing wet clothes, settling a hammock, and waking before relief. The middle watch has its own quiet character. Most of the ship lies dark, with only necessary lights protected from wind. The sea can appear black beside the rail. Stars turn slowly above the yards. The wake leaves a pale disturbance behind the stern. Speech remains low unless work requires a clear command. The bell sounds unusually bright in the open night air. Cold reaches the watch through damp cloth and moving wind. A sailor may pace a short safe distance when duty allows. He checks a knot with stiff fingers. He leans briefly near a sheltered part of the deck. No fire can be carried about casually on a wooden ship. Warmth must wait until the watch ends or the galley becomes active. In rain, water finds every exposed surface. It runs from hats and sleeves, darkens rope, and gathers near scuppers. The deck shines under a lantern. Sailors work without dramatic haste because wet weather is ordinary. They secure what needs securing and keep passages clear. Below, the off-watch men may hear drops passing through imperfect seams and striking the deck. The morning watch begins while darkness still covers much of the sea. Its later hours bring the first grey light. Shapes return slowly to the rigging. The horizon becomes visible, and the lookout can see farther. Men below begin to stir before the next 8 bells. Soon hammocks will come down, decks will be opened, and the ship will enter its daytime work. The watch system never gives the vessel a true night. It gives each sailor a temporary night inside a hammock. Around him, other men continue steering, observing, recording, and tending sail. 4 hours later, their places change. Wind and a timetable of bells carry the ship through this exchange. The pattern begins again after 8 strokes fade across the water. Below the upper deck, sleeping space appears only when daytime work is finished. Sailors do not enter a room filled with permanent beds. They carry or retrieve rolled bedding and prepare a place among beams, guns, and mess tables. A hammock is a strong piece of canvas suspended at both ends. It hangs above the deck, giving its occupant a narrow resting place that moves with the ship. The hammock suits a vessel better than a fixed bed in several ways. It uses air space that can be cleared each morning. Its curved canvas supports the body without a wide wooden frame. When the ship rolls, the suspended bed can swing rather than slide across the deck. Yet comfort depends on proper hanging. Too tight feels hard, while too much slack bends the sleeper sharply. Each hammock needs secure points and enough room around neighboring bedding. On a crowded warship, the rows can be close. The Anson account describes hammocks touching one another aboard the Centurion. This crowded image belongs to that large crew during that voyage. It still shows why privacy was limited. A sleeper hears breathing, cloth moving, and the small sounds of many bodies nearby. A sailor enters carefully, often by grasping the edge and turning his weight inward. The canvas rises around his sides. Bedding may include a blanket and a thin mattress or filled bag. Clothing can remain partly on the body during cold or unsettled weather. Boots must be placed where they will not vanish or block movement. Every object needs a known position before darkness deepens. The beams overhead feel low, especially beneath another deck. Lanterns are few and controlled. A person sitting upright too quickly may meet timber above. Hammocks stretch across spaces used by moving men during daylight. Their arrangement must therefore follow the ship's structure. Hooks, clews, and lines hold each bed. The same vocabulary of rope work that manages sails also supports sleep. Officers sometimes used different suspended beds. Falconer described a cot as a canvas bed frame hung from deck beams. He considered it more convenient than a hammock or fixed cabin at sea. Such a cot was wider and shaped more like a canvas chest. Rank could therefore change sleeping equipment as well as location. Most common sailors rested without that added space. The lower deck remains a social room before sleep. Men assigned to a mess eat together and share practical arrangements. A mess is not only a meal. It is also a small working group within the larger crew. Members receive and divide provisions, clean their utensils, and keep their area in order. Their table may be a removable board supported between guns or beams. Bowls, wooden spoons, mugs, and a few knives serve repeated meals. Fragile objects are poorly suited to a rolling deck. A mess keeps track of its own simple equipment. After eating, surfaces are wiped and items are secured. The table must disappear or stand clear when other work begins. Nothing can remain arranged as it might inside a house. Conversation fills some off-watch hours. Sailors exchange news remembered from shore and stories from earlier voyages. One man repairs a shirt beneath a lantern. Another works a short length of rope into a useful knot. Some carve small pieces of wood or bone. Royal Museum's Greenwich notes cards, dice, music, drawing, model making, and knot practice among traditional off-duty activities. These moments are not guaranteed leisure. Clothing must be mended because replacements are limited. Knots are practiced because they matter during work. A sailor may use off-watch time to repair something neglected during rough weather. He may also be called back on deck. The shared space never becomes fully separate from duty. Orders can descend through the hatch at any hour. Personal boundaries rely on custom rather than walls. A chest, bag, or folded garment marks a small area. Letters and keepsakes remain inside closed storage. A sailor cannot leave belongings spread around the deck. Water, vermin, or another person's boots could damage them. Order protects both property and movement. The most private moment may be a quiet minute inside the curved sides of a hammock. Air below deck changes through the night. Warm bodies add heat and moisture. Wet clothing releases dampness slowly. Closed gun ports reduce ventilation during bad weather. Lamps consume air and add smell, so they remain limited. Hatches provide the main path upward. When the sea permits, openings improve the space, but spray can force them partly closed again. The hull speaks around the sleeping men. Planks creak as waves place changing pressure on the frame. Water brushes and knocks against the outer boards. A loose spoon may tap softly inside a chest. Feet cross the deck above during the watch. These sounds are not a special soundscape created for rest. They are the ordinary signs that the vessel continues moving and working. A sudden change in motion can wake the whole row. The ship may heel farther as wind fills the sails. A wave may strike the bow and send a deeper sound through the timber. Experienced sailors notice whether the movement is normal. If no call follows, many settle again. The hammock swings, the canvas tightens, and the repeated motion becomes familiar. Before dawn, the watch below receives its call. Men leave hammocks, dress, and climb towards the deck. Those who are not immediately required still cannot keep bedding hanging all morning. The sleeping deck must return to a workplace. Hammocks are untied or released, bedding is rolled, and the canvas is lashed into a compact bundle. Falconer's Dictionary explains that hammocks and seamen's bedding could be stowed in nettings along the upper part of a ship's side. In a warship, these packed bundles also gave some protection from small shot during battle. The same object therefore served sleep, storage, and defense. Its movement from beam to netting formed part of the daily change from night to day. William Bligh described this routine aboard the Bounty during difficult weather. Wet berths forced some men to hang hammocks in the great cabin. Every morning, all hammocks came down. When weather prevented keeping them on deck, they were put in the cabin. This allowed the between-decks area to be cleaned daily and aired with fires. That record links sleep directly with cleaning. Bedding cannot remain while men sweep, wash, and dry the deck. Damp canvas also benefits from air whenever conditions allow. A wet hammock makes the next rest colder and less pleasant. Sailors therefore value a dry interval on deck. Sun and wind can improve bedding more effectively than the crowded lower space. A calm morning may bring rows of bundled hammocks into open air. The upper deck grows brighter, and the sea reflects light through the rails. Below, beams stand empty again. Tables, guns, and passages regain their daytime form. The transformation is rapid because everyone knows where each object belongs. A crowded ship depends on spaces changing purpose without confusion. By evening, the process reverses. Mess equipment is cleared, work is secured, and hammocks return from storage. Lines stretch between beams in familiar positions. Blankets unfold, sea chests close, and lantern light settles across the canvas rows. The sleeping deck appears again without becoming a true bedroom. Above it, the bell continues marking another watch, and the next group prepares for a few hours of broken rest. Morning work begins by opening the spaces that night has filled. Hammocks come down, bedding moves upward, and mess areas are cleared. Hatches stand open when weather permits. The lower deck receives pale daylight and a stronger movement of air. Sailors then sweep, wash, scrape, carry, inspect, and repair. Much of this labor leaves no dramatic mark because its purpose is prevention. Bligh's account of the Bounty describes the between-decks area being cleaned daily. He also mentions airing it with fires when wet weather complicated the routine. The detail belongs to one vessel and one captain's practice. It shows a broader need shared by wooden ships. Crowded enclosed decks gathered moisture, smells, dirt, and traces of food. Leaving them untouched would quickly make daily life harder. The deck itself needs regular care. Sand and water can help lift dirt from planks. Brooms move water towards openings called scuppers. Sailors may use stones or scrapers on stubborn surfaces. Work proceeds section by section so passages remain usable. In cold weather, wet cleaning brings discomfort. In warm climates, it offers no simple cure for the heavy air below. Drying matters as much as washing. Water hidden beneath chests or equipment can soften timber over time. Damp encourages decay and makes rope and cloth unpleasant to handle. Men lift movable objects and check the boards beneath them. Air is guided through hatches and windsails when available. A windsail is a canvas tube that directs outside air into lower parts of the vessel. The ship's structure is always under observation. Planks expand, shrink, and move as the hull works in the sea. Seams can admit water. Iron fastenings may stain surrounding wood. Pumps remove ordinary leakage from the lowest spaces. Their repeated use does not necessarily mean disaster. A wooden ship commonly takes in some water, and the crew manages it as routine maintenance. The carpenter listens and looks for changes. He has tools, spare timber, and assistance for practical repairs. A damaged spar may require shaping or reinforcement. A hatch cover needs a sound fit. Boats, masts, pumps, and wooden fittings all draw on his skill. During heavy weather, he may check the hull more often. His work protects a structure that cannot visit a dock while at sea. The boatswain holds another wide field of responsibility. Falconer assigned him boats, sails, rigging, colors, anchors, and cables. He and his mates examine what supports the masts and carries the sails. Rope suffers from strain, salt, chafing, and sunlight. Canvas tears along seams or where it rubs against another object. Small faults must be found before the next strong wind enlarges them. A rope rarely fails without earlier signs. Its outer fibers become rough or flattened. Tar wears away. A line may stiffen after repeated salt water. Sailors protect vulnerable places with extra material called chafing gear. They turn or renew parts when possible. Coils are kept clear and properly placed. A tangled line wastes precious time when sail must be handled quickly. Sails also receive quiet attention on suitable days. A damaged sail comes down and spreads across an open area. The sailmaker and helpers examine seams, corners, and reef points. Needles pass through heavy canvas with a palm protector. Patches strengthen worn places. The work looks calm, but every stitch prepares for pressure that will return when the sail is set. Ordinary sailors carry much of the maintenance burden. They splice rope, serve sections with smaller cord, and repair simple gear. They move stores and clean boats. They polish or protect metal where rust appears. Naval crews drill with guns and small arms, but daily readiness also depends on humble objects. A sound bucket, clear pump, secure hatch, and dry line can matter greatly. Salt never remains politely outside the hull. Spray dries on rails, ropes, clothing, and fittings. It leaves a pale roughness that attracts moisture. Fresh water is too valuable for careless washing on long voyages. Seawater therefore does much cleaning, despite its own residue. Crews balance the need for cleanliness against the limits of stored water and weather. Animals may also share the ship. Livestock taken for fresh food needs feeding and cleaning. Rats find grain and damaged stores. Insects enter biscuit and cloth. The crew sets traps, protects containers, and removes spoiled material when discovered. Complete control is difficult inside a large wooden vessel. Good stowage and regular inspection become the practical defense. The galley creates its own work around ash, grease, and fire. Cooking flame is carefully contained because the whole vessel is combustible. Fuel must stay dry enough to burn. Pots need securing when the ship rolls. Ash is removed without scattering sparks. The cook's area remains small compared with the number of mouths it serves. Cleanliness there protects limited provisions as well as comfort. Upper decks face different conditions. Sun can dry timber strongly, while rain soaks it again. Heat opens seams and changes tar. Cold makes wet ropes hard on the hands. Men adjust awnings, hatch coverings, and ventilation as weather changes. Nothing stays correct for long. Maintenance is a continuous response rather than a task finished once. A calm sea offers a valuable repair window. Sailors bring work into the light and spread equipment where it can be examined. Boats may receive attention alongside or on deck. Rigging is set up more evenly. Spare lines are measured and prepared. The officer of the watch still monitors course and weather, because the useful calm can end before work is complete. Heavy weather reverses the priorities. Loose objects are secured first. Hatches are covered, boats are checked, and sails are reduced. Cleaning waits while survival systems receive attention. Water enters through spray and imperfect seals. Men in wet clothes move carefully over the working deck. When conditions ease, the long process of drying and inspecting begins again. Cook's journal records days when the Endeavour was caulked, cleaned fore and aft, and prepared with sails. Such entries are brief because officers treated them as normal business. The short wording hides hours of physical labor. Planks had to be reached, tools carried, surfaces cleared, and equipment restored. A single line in a journal can represent a full working day for many men. The log records what deserves notice, but most repeated work remains unnamed. No officer lists every coil lifted or every wetboard swept. The crew understands those actions through habit. Each man learns his station and the standard expected there. Older sailors correct younger ones. The order of tasks becomes part of the ship's daily memory. By late morning, the lower deck has changed again. Air passes more freely through cleared spaces. Bedding rests above whenever weather allows. Damp patches have been attended, and mess equipment waits for the next meal. The work leaves the ship looking much as it did before. That unchanged appearance is the evidence of successful maintenance. The hull continues rising and settling beneath the workers. A broom moves across planks. A needle enters heavy sailcloth. The carpenter's tool sounds briefly from below. Someone checks the pump and reports the result. None of these moments needs suspense. Together they explain how a wooden vessel remained habitable and useful across months when the nearest dock lay far beyond the horizon. A sailing ship moves because the crew gives shape to a large area of canvas. Wind presses each sail, and the force travels through yards, masts, rigging, and hull. From a distance, the motion can seem effortless. On deck, it depends on many ropes handled in the correct order. Sailors must know their stations before a command arrives. Square sails hang from horizontal yards across the masts. Other sails fill spaces between masts or extend ahead of the bow. Each has lines for raising, lowering, turning, and controlling its corners. The names are numerous because each line performs a different action. A sailor learns them through repetition, touch, position, and the shouted sequence of work. Setting sail begins with preparation on deck and aloft. Canvas is loosened from the yard. Lines are cleared so they can run without knots. Men haul together while others ease the opposite side. The sail opens, takes wind, and changes the pressure on the ship. A badly placed hand can be trapped by a moving rope, so coordination matters more than speed alone. Reefing reduces a sail's area when wind strengthens. Sailors climb into the rigging and move out along a yard. Their feet rest on a suspended rope while their bodies lean over canvas. They gather and secure a measured part of the sail. Hands remain occupied, so balance comes from legs, chest, and practiced movement. The sea continues below without pausing for the work. This task is done calmly when officers shorten sail early. Waiting too long makes every line strain harder. Good seamanship often appears as work completed before conditions become severe. Clouds, pressure, waves, and the behavior of the wind offer warning. The officer of the watch reads those signs and orders a change. Sailors then perform a familiar operation under changing light and motion. Furling gathers the whole sail against its yard. The canvas must lie securely enough to resist wind. A loose corner can beat itself to damage. In rain, the sail becomes heavy and stiff. In cold weather, fingers lose easy movement. Men still pass gaskets around the bundle and finish each tie. They return inboard along the same narrow foot rope. The standing rigging supports masts and does not usually move during sail handling. Shrouds rise from the ship's sides and also form ladders. Stays support masts forward and aft. Running rigging moves sails and yards. Every loaded rope carries part of the wind's force. The boatswain's care of this system links maintenance directly with the ship's movement. At the stern, the helmsman feels the result through wheel or tiller. A wooden vessel does not turn instantly. Rudder pressure, hull shape, current, and sail balance combine slowly. The man at the helm watches the compass and listens to the conning officer. He makes measured corrections rather than chasing every small swing. Too much movement can create a wandering course. The compass sits inside its protected case with a light at night. Its card turns as the ship changes direction. Nearby iron and the vessel's own motion can complicate readings. Officers compare the heading with wind, sea, and their observations. Course is therefore maintained through instruments and experience together. No single glance replaces continuous attention. The log line gives an estimate of speed through the water. A measured line runs out behind the ship for a timed interval. Marks along it help the crew count the rate. The result joins course and time in the written reckoning. Currents can still carry the vessel away from that estimated path. Landfalls therefore require careful observation and caution. Falconer described the logbook as a daily record copied at noon. It included circumstances deserving notice and divisions corresponding to watches. Cook's journal preserves the same practical habit in repeated entries. Wind direction, course, distance, sail, weather, and position appear in compact form. The sea becomes a sequence of observations rather than an empty space. Weather touches every person differently across the ship. The lookout receives it directly at the bow. The helmsman feels rain drive across the stern. Men aloft meet stronger wind without shelter. Sailors below hear the change through hull and rigging. A shift in pressure can heal the vessel and tilt every hanging object. Daily tasks adapt around that moving floor. In light airs, the ship may roll without moving far ahead. Sails hang loose, then fill briefly and fall again. Blocks knock against masts. Heat gathers below because little wind enters hatches. Work continues on repairs and cleaning. Officers search the horizon and watch the water for signs of a returning breeze. A steady fair wind produces a different rhythm. Canvas remains full and the hull leans at a regular angle. Water passes evenly along the sides. The wake stretches behind in a pale line. Small adjustments keep sails drawing well. The watch checks ropes where they bear against wood. This is movement at its most settled, though attention never ends. Rain can arrive without dangerous wind. Sailors protect openings while keeping enough ventilation below. Clothing becomes heavy and takes time to dry. Wet rope swells and handles differently. Decks grow slippery, so feet find familiar braces and edges. Work proceeds with shorter steps and secure grips. Afterward, every damp object becomes part of the next maintenance period. A squall brings a local increase of wind and rain. Officers may see its darker line approaching across the water. Sail is reduced, loose equipment secured, and the crew stands ready. The change passes over the vessel, then eases. Canvas is set again when conditions allow. The ship returns to its course without a dramatic pause in the voyage. Long swell can continue beneath a calm sky. The hull rises slowly, reaches a high point, and settles into the hollow. Masts trace broad arcs against the horizon. Hammocks below move with their suspension, while tables and chests remain secured. Some sailors adjust quickly to this motion. Others need time before eating and working feel ordinary. The crew also responds to wear created by movement itself. A rope rubbing through one watch may need protection in the next. A sail edge begins to fray. A block grows warm under repeated strain. Water reaches a seam that stayed dry in calmer seas. The ship continually reports its condition through small signs noticed by experienced hands. As afternoon light lowers, sail may be adjusted for the coming night. Officers consider visibility and expected weather. Gear is coiled where no one will trip in darkness. The next watch receives a clear deck and known sail plan. A lantern glows near the compass. The horizon loses color, while wind continues pressing the canvas above. The vessel does not move by wind alone. It moves because sailors translate wind into controlled force. Their hands haul, ease, tie, steer, record, and repair. Each action is modest when considered separately. Across every watch, those actions maintain a course through changing water. By night, the sound of full sails settles into the same working rhythm as bells and waves. Anchors and boats form another part of the vessel's daily working world. They remain quiet for long periods, then demand coordinated labor at departure or arrival. An anchor is not simply a heavy hook dropped into water. Its cable, shape, position, and the ground below all matter. The crew prepares the whole system before a harbor or exposed roadstead comes near. The great cable lies below in its own tier when not in use. It must run outward without tangling or trapping anyone. Sailors range sections carefully and inspect the route towards the bow. The boatswain oversees anchors and cables as part of his period duties. Officers consider depth, tide, wind, and room for the vessel to swing. Sounding gives information about water beneath the hull. A weighted lead line reaches downward while the ship moves slowly. Marks show depth, and material in the lead's hollow base can reveal the seabed. Mud, sand, shell, or gravel helps identify known anchorages. Falconer notes that soundings were recorded in the logbook to compare position and earlier observations. When the anchor goes, its cable runs with great force. Men stand clear of the moving line and follow assigned tasks. Friction must be controlled without stopping the anchor too soon. The ship gradually turns as wind and tide place weight on the cable. Officers watch landmarks and other vessels to confirm that the anchor holds. Raising it again requires sustained effort. Men walk around the capstan, a vertical turning machine connected to the cable. Bars project from its head, allowing many sailors to push together. A song or repeated call can help coordinate steps. The cable returns wet and carries traces of the seabed. It must be managed, cleaned, and stowed for future use. Ships' boats connect the vessel with shore and with other ships. They carry people, letters, provisions, water casks, and repair parties. The boatswain's responsibility includes their condition and equipment. Oars, sails, plugs, painters, and small anchors must remain ready. A damaged boat can isolate a ship anchored beyond the quay. Launching a boat also uses tackles and coordinated hands. The hull descends from deck or side towards moving water. Crew members enter with assigned positions. Weight must remain balanced as people and stores come aboard. Once clear, oars rise and dip together. The parent ship appears much larger from this low place beside its dark planks. Watering parties perform especially important work. Empty casks travel ashore, are filled from an available source, and return heavy. Each cask passes through several stages of rolling, lifting, lowering, and stowing. Officers protect the source and inspect what comes aboard. The ship's future range increases with every sound container returned to the hold. Fresh food follows a similar path but needs different handling. Vegetables bruise, meat spoils, and live animals require space. Supplies are counted before stowage. The crew may receive fresh portions soon after loading. Other goods are arranged for later use. A brief anchorage can therefore create several days of concentrated carrying and account keeping. Harbour work does not remove the watch system. Tide, weather, fire, theft, and dragging anchors still require attention. A boat may return after dark, guided by a lantern. The deck watch receives its cargo and reports arrivals. Off-watch sailors sleep below while familiar shore sounds carry faintly across the water. At sea, boats remain secured against motion. Their weight high on the vessel affects stability, so placement matters. Lashings are checked after rough weather. Covers protect equipment where possible. A boat that shifts can damage nearby gear. Like every large object aboard, it must become part of the ship rather than a passenger moving independently. The anchor rests at the bow, ready but controlled. Its cable waits below in darkness. Boats lie under canvas or hang from strong supports. These systems make arrival possible long before land appears. They also explain more of the repeated maintenance seen across the deck. Iron, timber, rope, and canvas all need attention before the moment they are suddenly required. The galley turns stored provisions into the nearest thing to a regular meal. It is a small working space arranged around controlled fire. On many vessels, the cook serves far more people than the room suggests. Pots must remain stable as the deck moves. Fuel, water, and food arrive in measured amounts. Nothing can be replaced easily once the harbour is distant. Royal Museum's Greenwich lists salted beef or pork, cheese, fish, ale, and ship's biscuit among common provisions. Exact rations changed by service, period, port, and voyage. The central problem remained preservation. Fresh meat and vegetables lasted only a limited time. Salted, dried, or hard foods survived longer. Their durability mattered more than variety during extended passages. Ship's biscuit was a hard-baked bread designed for storage. It could be eaten dry, broken, or softened in liquid. Sound biscuit provided dependable grain when ordinary bread would spoil. Damaged stores became stale, damp, moldy, or infested. Sailors learned to inspect each piece in poor conditions. The problem was unpleasant but common enough to be handled without surprise. Salt meat needed preparation before cooking. A period shifter helped the cook wash, soak, and change salted provisions. Soaking could reduce some of the salt, though fresh water was limited. Large pieces simmered in a pot and were divided among messes. The result gave energy and protein but changed little from week to week. Repetition became part of the voyage. Peas, oatmeal, flour, portable soup, or other stores might add substance. Bligh recorded the Bounty being victualled for 18 months. Its additional provisions included sauerkraut, portable soup, malt products, barley, and wheat. That list belongs to a late 18th century expedition with particular health concerns. It shows the planning required before a long voyage left England. The cook works within a fixed schedule shaped by watches. He lights and tends the galley when conditions allow. Rough seas can make fire and heavy pots unsafe. Meals may become simpler when the vessel moves violently. Smoke must find its route out. Ash and sparks need close control. The wooden walls around the galley make careless flame unacceptable. Each mess receives its share rather than gathering around one large dining hall. A representative may collect food in a wooden container. Messmates divide portions according to custom and duty. They eat near their own berth or working area. Bowls rest in hands or on secured surfaces. Conversation continues while the deck lifts and settles beneath them. Officers eat separately and may have greater variety. Their stores can include preserved fruits, spices, wine, or private supplies. The captain's table has more space and equipment. Rank therefore appears in food as clearly as in cabins. Yet all aboard still depend on the same hull, weather, and stored water. A damaged cask can affect every level of the ship. Drink requires careful management. Water is carried in casks and receives regular inspection. It can develop smell or taste during long storage. Casks may leak, admit contamination, or be damaged by movement. Officers track remaining quantities against distance and expected landfall. A plentiful harbour can become an important objective because water determines how long a vessel can remain independent. Beer, wine, or spirits could supplement the water allowance. Cook recorded taking bread, beer, and water aboard before departure. Later, he noted keeping 2 beer casks after the rest was used. Such entries show drink as a store counted and managed like other provisions. Alcohol did not remove the need for water. Cooking, drinking, cleaning, and health still depended on a safe supply. Water casks sit low in the vessel because of their weight. As they empty, the ship's balance and remaining endurance change. Men raise or move casks using tackles and careful coordination. A container must be opened without wasting its contents. Daily issue is measured rather than guessed. During scarcity, every cup becomes part of the voyage's calculation. Anson's account describes the centurion with very little fresh water and few healthy foremast men. That moment belonged to an exceptionally severe voyage. It shows how health and water could become one connected operational problem. 6 sailors could not work the ship effectively. A weakened ship struggled to reach the place where fresh water and food might restore its crew. Fresh provisions offer a marked change whenever the vessel reaches land. Vegetables, fruit, meat, and greens enter the diet again. Cook's journal repeatedly notes refreshment from fresh supplies. Their value was observed before vitamins were understood. Crews could see men improve after landing or receiving produce, even when the exact reason remained uncertain. Storage is inspected throughout the passage. Bligh recorded damaged provisions after severe weather, especially bread. Water entering a storeroom could ruin food that looked secure at departure. Casks shift, hoops loosen, and sacks tear. The purser and other officers account for losses. Sailors move surviving stores to safer positions and remove what can no longer be used. Rats and insects complicate this work. Grain and biscuit attract animals that thrive in hidden wooden spaces. Containers are kept closed and lifted where possible. A sailor may tap or break biscuit before eating it. This practical inspection does not need embellishment. It belongs to the ordinary difficulty of carrying months of food without modern sealed packaging. Meal times provide structure inside the changing watch schedule. Not everyone eats together because one group remains on duty. The cook and messes arrange service around those divisions. A man relieved from deck may eat after others. Another rises, eats quickly, and climbs into rain. Food therefore marks the day without creating one shared pause for the entire crew. Utensils are simple and durable. Wooden bowls do not shatter easily. A spoon and knife serve many meals. Mugs are kept close and cleaned with limited means. Messmates share responsibility for their objects. Losing one overboard or into the hold creates a lasting inconvenience. The value of ordinary things increases when shops are months away. The smell of cooking travels through the deck before a meal. Steam carries salt meat, peas, or oatmeal into the passage. For a short time, it replaces tar and damp cloth. Men gather near their mess places without crowding the galley. Portions arrive, bowls settle in laps, and the lower deck becomes quieter as eating begins. There is no need to make the meal either comforting or terrible. It is fuel, routine, and a repeated social moment. Quality varies from one cask to the next. Hunger makes plain food welcome. Poor storage can make it difficult. Fresh supplies can lift the whole crew's condition. Most days remain between those extremes, built around biscuit, salted food, measured drink, and the cook's steady work. Afterward, containers return, scraps are controlled, and tables are cleared. The galley fire is tended or made safe. Water casks remain closed. Another entry may be added to the store account. Above, the watch continues beneath full sails. Below, the smell of the meal slowly fades into timber and rope as the ship carries its provisions towards the next port. Landfall begins as an expectation inside the ship's routine. Officers compare the log, observations, charts, depth, and remembered coastal shapes. The lookout studies a section of horizon that appears unchanged. Sailors continue ordinary work because the expected shore may remain beyond sight for many hours. A voyage does not pause while navigation becomes more careful. Charts show coastlines, depths, hazards, and named anchorages with varying accuracy. 18th-century officers also used sailing directions and earlier logs. Falconer described soundings as evidence recorded for later pilots. Each voyage could correct or confirm what another vessel had reported. Knowledge of the sea accumulated through such practical comparisons. Latitude could be estimated from the sun or stars when weather allowed. Longitude remained more difficult through much of the century. Cook's first Pacific voyage carried no marine chronometer. Officers used lunar observations and dead reckoning, which estimated movement from course, speed, and time. Clouds or rough motion could interrupt the best planned observation. The lead line becomes more important as water shallows. Sailors take repeated soundings and call the depth. The seabed material provides another clue. A known sequence of mud, sand, or shell can support the charted position. None of these signs stands alone. Officers combine them with wind, tide, landmarks, and the ship's recent track. The first visible sign may not be land itself. Birds gather farther from open ocean. Seaweed changes, or water takes another color. Clouds form over high ground beyond the horizon. These clues suggest nearness without giving a safe course. The lookout reports them plainly, and the officer decides what attention they deserve. When a headland finally appears, it begins as a low-grey interruption. More detail emerges slowly as the vessel advances. A hill separates from cloud. Light catches a cliff or pale building. Sail is adjusted to approach with control. Boats, anchors, and cables receive another inspection. The ship prepares to exchange open water routine for harbor work. Land also promises repairs and fresh stores. Cook's journal repeatedly notes water, beer, bread, vegetables, and other supplies arriving aboard. Men weakened by months of preserved food could benefit from fresh provisions. Damaged sails and spars might be repaired more fully. Letters could leave the vessel, and news could arrive from another part of the world. Approach still follows the watch. The helmsman holds ordered courses while soundings continue. Lookouts identify boats and marks. The officer records changes and reduces sail as needed. A pilot may come aboard with local knowledge. His presence does not remove the captain's responsibility. It adds detailed understanding of currents, channels, and hazards near shore. A harbour smells different before the ship reaches its anchorage. Smoke, vegetation, mud, and cooking fires can travel over water. Small craft cross the vessel's path. Voices carry from shore in calm air. The crew sees roofs, roads, and people moving without the ship's roll. These ordinary sights can feel unfamiliar after a long passage. The anchor goes, the sails come in, and the hull turns to wind or tide. Work remains active until every line and yard is secure. Boats are prepared, officers make reports, and stores are assessed. Men do not all step ashore together. Watches continue, and permission governs movement. The vessel remains both home and workplace even within sight of streets. A sailor returning from a boat brings water on his boots and perhaps a small purchase in his chest. Another remains aboard to scrub, guard, or repair. Fresh food may appear at the next meal. Bedding receives better air in settled weather. The lower deck changes slightly, but its beams, hammocks, and shared messes remain the same. Departure will reverse the process. Casks return full, boats come aboard, and anchors rise from the seabed. Canvas opens across the yards. The harbour narrows astern until buildings become pale shapes. The log begins another outward passage. Ahead lies the same measured life of watches, bells, meals, maintenance, and sleep. For the ordinary sailor, navigation appears through work more than calculation. He hauls the line used for sounding. He trims sail to a new course. He turns the capstan and stows the returning cable. He watches a headland move across the rail. Officers place figures in books, while the whole crew turns those figures into movement. The coast slowly settles behind evening haze. Open water spreads ahead again. Stores from shore sit secured in the hold, and fresh water fills sound casks. The galley prepares a meal with a little more variety. Above, the next bell marks another half hour. Landfall has changed the supplies, but not the continuing order of the ship. Health at sea depends on food, water, air, cleanliness, weather, and chance. 18th-century sailors understood many practical connections without knowing modern causes. They saw that fresh provisions could restore weak men. They knew crowded damp spaces encouraged sickness. They valued clean decks and aired bedding. Their treatment still remained limited, and long voyages could reduce a strong crew with alarming speed. Royal Museum's Greenwich names scurvy, typhus, dysentery, malaria, and yellow fever among important naval diseases. Not every voyage met all these conditions. Climate and route shaped the risk. Crowded ships and uncertain water increased some dangers. Tropical ports exposed crews to illnesses unfamiliar in northern waters. Cold and wet weakened comfort and made recovery more difficult. Scurvy came from a long lack of vitamin C, although sailors did not know that explanation. Early signs included fatigue and weakness. Continued deficiency damaged the body more deeply. The disease could leave too few fit sailors for ordinary work. This mattered beyond individual suffering. A sailing vessel required enough healthy hands to steer, reef, pump, repair, and respond to weather. The voyage led by George Anson shows an extreme result. Royal Museum's Greenwich records more than 1,300 deaths across the expedition from scurvy, typhus, dysentery, and malaria. The figure belongs to that exceptional voyage from 1740 to 1744. It is not a normal rate for every ship. It demonstrates how disease could overwhelm a squadron before causes and prevention were fully understood. Anson's own account repeatedly describes reduced working strength. On one occasion, the Centurion had very few foremast men capable of duty. Fresh water had become scarce, and the ship was in poor condition. Reaching land offered water, fish, vegetables, and space for sick men. The account makes health part of seamanship rather than a subject separate from it. By the later 18th century, accumulated experience changed naval practice. Royal Museum's Greenwich states that lemon and lime juice entered naval issue from 1795. The policy reduced scurvy even before vitamin chemistry was known. Earlier proposed remedies often failed because they did not replace the missing nutrient. Fresh fruit and vegetables worked for reasons that observers could see but not yet explain. The surgeon works from a small cabin or assigned area. He keeps instruments, medicines, dressings, and records within limited space. Treatment occurs while the deck moves beneath everyone. Light may be poor, water restricted, and air heavy. Historical medical practice is described here only as history. It does not offer advice for illness or injury now. Sick sailors might remain in hammocks among healthy messmates on crowded vessels. Later improvements created more deliberate sick bays with better ventilation and separation. Royal Museum's Greenwich links such changes to reduced infectious disease in the early 19th century. The development was gradual. A Georgian ship's arrangement depended on size, captain, surgeon, and available space. Cleanliness offered one practical defense. Bligh's daily removal of hammocks and airing of between-deck spaces shows attention to ventilation. Cook also maintained strict order and cleanliness during his voyages. These measures could not solve every disease. They still reduced damp, spoiled material, and foul air around living spaces. Routine maintenance therefore carried a health purpose alongside a naval one. Accidents formed another ordinary risk. Rope under strain could move suddenly. Blocks and spars carried heavy loads above deck. Falls from rigging caused serious injury. Wet boards made footing uncertain. A loose gun or cask could crush people during rough motion. Experienced crews reduced these risks through stations, calls, secure stowage, and repeated practice. Work aloft demanded particular trust. Sailors moved close together along yards and shrouds. Each man needed the next line and not to hold. Orders had to remain clear in wind. A frightened or inexperienced movement could hinder others. Training turned a complicated task into a known sequence. It could never remove the height, motion, or hard surfaces below. Discipline supported that coordinated work, though punishment could be severe. Officers believed a crew must obey quickly because delay might endanger the ship. Royal Museum's Greenwich notes flogging as a common punishment and describes harsher penalties for serious offences. Cook's journal records 12 lashes in cases involving attempted desertion, abusive language, and failed duty. The entry is stated once without dwelling on physical detail. Naval authority reached through every part of the day. Sailors needed permission to leave stations or go ashore. Officers inspected work and recorded offences. Marines could support order aboard a warship. The captain held broad authority far from any court on land. Custom and formal articles shaped decisions, while actual practice varied between commanders and periods. Pressing also shaped naval crews during wartime. British law allowed men to be forced into service when volunteers did not fill the ships. Royal Museum's Greenwich notes that pressing peaked during the 18th century. A crew could therefore include willing sailors, experienced merchant seamen taken into naval service, and men with little choice. Their motives differed even when their assigned work became shared. Pay offered only part of the reason for service. Naval wages could fall below merchant rates by the end of the century. Prize money from captured vessels offered uncertain additional reward. Food, employment, compulsion, family custom, and adventure also influenced individual paths. No single explanation fits hundreds of men aboard many kinds of ship. Care also existed within the crew's hard structure. Messmates noticed when someone could not rise. Experienced sailors helped younger men understand a task. Clothing and small comforts might be shared. Sick men were moved ashore when a safe place became available. These actions do not turn the ship into a gentle community. They show practical dependence among people living beyond immediate help from land. The surgeon's knowledge had clear boundaries, but record-keeping slowly enlarged collective experience. Voyage journals noted weather, diet, illness, and outcomes. Admiralty reports compared events across ships. Practical observations became procedures over time. Improvements were uneven and often arrived after great loss. The late 18th century therefore sits between inherited methods and a more systematic naval medicine. As evening approaches, hatches remain open while conditions allow. Bedding receives air before returning below. The cook finishes another meal. A man with a minor injury rests from one duty and takes another when possible. The watch list still needs enough names. Health becomes visible in the simple question of who can climb, steer, haul, and stand through 4 hours. Night reduces activity but does not remove the body's needs. A feverish sailor hears the same bells as everyone else. The surgeon may be called from rest. Damp clothing hangs near a berth. Water is issued by measure. The lower deck holds warmth, breath, and quiet movement. Above, fresh air crosses the rails and fills the sails. The ship carries limited remedies, but it also carries habits learned through many voyages. Clean what can be cleaned. Air what can be aired. Protect food and water. Separate sickness when space permits. Reach fresh provisions when possible. Keep enough healthy men for every watch. These plain actions form the calm daily edge between an ordered vessel and a crew weakened beyond its work. Evening work narrows as daylight leaves the upper deck. Tools return to their places, repairs are secured, and loose lines are coiled. Officers review weather and the sail needed for darkness. The cook's fire is made safe after the meal. Mess tables disappear from shared spaces. Hammocks return below, and the ship slowly changes from daytime workshop to divided night quarters. The transition never reaches every person at once. One watch prepares for deck while another prepares for rest. The first group checks clothing, stations, and the condition of the weather. The second retrieves bedding and clears a small path to its usual place. Feet pass on ladders in opposite directions. Familiar order prevents the narrow hatches from becoming blocked. A sailor may use his remaining light to mend a seam. Needle and thread preserve clothing that must last many months. Another works a frayed end of rope into a neat finish. Someone wipes a wooden spoon before returning it to a chest. These quiet tasks are practical. They also give off-watch time a slower shape before sleep. Cards or dice may appear where rules and space allow. Music might come from a fiddle, pipe, or voice. Stories travel between messmates who have heard them before. Royal Museums Greenwich includes such activities among traditional off-duty life. Their presence varies from ship to ship. On a tired evening, many men prefer food, dry clothing, and the earliest possible rest. The hammock line takes shape across the lower deck. Each bundle opens into canvas, blanket, and suspension cords. Men check the points overhead and keep passages usable. The rows grow denser as more bedding rises from storage. Lantern light catches the curved edges. A room that held meals and maintenance now becomes a place for sleep again. Privacy lasts only inside a narrow boundary. A man may turn towards the canvas and close his eyes while voices continue nearby. The neighbor's hammock can hang within easy reach. Movement passes along the rows when someone enters or leaves. Yet each sailor learns to settle amid these shared sounds. Exhaustion often does more than silence could provide. The first watch begins above at 8 in the evening. A bell marks each half hour. The lookout studies the fading horizon, and the helmsman follows the compass. Sails remain dark shapes against the remaining sky. Below, men finishing a conversation hear the bell through timber. Some know they will rise at midnight. Others expect the morning watch closer to dawn. Sleep comes in a measured interval rather than an open night. Boots stand ready. Clothing stays near the body. The next call may arrive early if wind changes. A sailor therefore settles without arranging many comforts. The hammock supports him, the blanket closes around him, and the sea provides a repeated lifting motion beneath the deck. At midnight, 8 bells complete the first watch. The call reaches below and wakes the next group. Canvas creaks as men sit, turn, and step onto the deck. They dress quietly because others remain off duty. The relieved watch descends carrying cold air and damp on its clothes. For a few minutes, waking and sleeping men occupy the same narrow space. Information passes on deck before the change is complete. Course, wind, sail, and anything sighted are reported. The new helmsman finds the compass heading. The lookout takes his place. The officer checks that each station is covered. Only then can the earlier watch leave its responsibilities. The ship's safety rests on this ordinary exchange being complete every time. The middle watch extends from midnight until 4 in the morning. It can be the quietest period, especially under steady weather. Stars provide the widest visible structure above the masts. The deck lies mostly empty beyond assigned men. A lantern near the binnacle gives a small stable glow. Water passes along the hull with a sound that barely changes. A practical seamanship manual published in 1841 describes routines that continued older habits. Its details belong to merchant practice after the main period of this account. They still help explain familiar words and orderly exchanges used across the age of sail. The manual treats a watch as both a group of sailors and the hours assigned to that group. This double meaning is simple aboard ship because the people and their time belong together. On a merchant vessel, the crew could be divided into 2 watches. One was commonly called larboard, an older word for the left side of the ship. The other was called starboard. An officer led each division. While one watch remained on deck, the other went below. 4 hours later, they exchanged places. The arrangement gave the vessel a working crew at every hour without requiring every sailor to remain awake through the whole night. The exchange did not promise 4 clear hours of sleep. A sailor first left his station, descended through the hatch, found his berth, and settled among men already resting. At the end of the interval, he needed time to wake, dress, climb back to deck, and relieve another person. Meals, repairs, weather, and calls for all hands could shorten the period further. The label below therefore meant freedom from the watch, not a guarantee of uninterrupted rest. Later merchant practice called the strict alternation of 4 hours above and 4 below watch and watch. Bad weather could make this pattern necessary because normal daytime work was reduced and the ship needed reliable reliefs. In easier conditions, crews might use daylight differently. The night division still mattered most to sleep. Its repeated change gave every man a place in the sequence. The sea could remain too dark to show the passing hours. The call for the next watch began only when the old period had expired. Someone went to the opening above the sleeping space and made the call loudly enough to carry below. A reply confirmed that the sleepers had heard. The rising men were expected to move promptly, but they were allowed the ordinary moments needed for clothing and ladders. This small exchange kept a tired crew from relying on guesswork in the dark. The sailor due at the helm had a special reason to rise first. The wheel could not be left while the old helmsman waited below. In later merchant custom, relief at the wheel marked the real completion of the watch change. Until the new hands held the spokes and understood the course, the former watch still carried responsibility. Other men could then leave their stations knowing that the ship remained under direct control. Helm duty was often divided into shorter turns within the watch. The later manual describes 2-hour turns, with shorter periods possible in severe cold and extra help in a gale. These details varied by ship and date. The practical reason stayed steady. Steering demanded continuous attention, and cold, strain, or a difficult sea could exhaust one person before the 4-hour watch ended. The handover at the wheel used plain repetition. The sailor leaving gave the course aloud. The sailor taking over repeated it clearly, rather than offering only a general answer. Similar compass points could sound alike in wind. Repeating the exact course allowed the officer to hear that both men shared the same instruction. The practice turned a brief sentence into a check against a quiet but important mistake. Once at the helm, the sailor attended only to steering. Conversation could distract him from the compass, the sails, or the pressure of the rudder. Small corrections kept the vessel near its ordered line. The officer watched both course and conditions, then gave new instructions when needed. The helmsman repeated an important order before carrying it out. This measured pattern kept speech short and useful during the dark hours. The bell carried another kind of information. Strokes came every half hour and built from 1 to 8 across a 4-hour watch. They were grouped in pairs, with a final single stroke when the number was odd. A sailor did not need to see a clock. The shape of the sound helped him judge whether a full hour or half-hour had passed. Timber and canvas carried the signal to the lower deck. Men stationed elsewhere followed the same habit of clear answers when timing mattered. An order to release a rope or move a yard needed confirmation because several parts of the ship might move together. The answer told the officer that the instruction had reached the correct station. Routine replies were enough for ordinary work. Exact repetition belonged to actions where a wrong course or a late line could disturb the whole maneuver. When no special work was underway, sailors on deck stayed mainly in their assigned areas. The forecastle was the forward part of the upper deck. It provided the usual place for ordinary seamen not at the wheel or aloft. They moved aft only when duty required it. This arrangement kept passageways and officers' working space clear. It also made every available person easier to find when the wind demanded a change. Night discipline could remain quiet without becoming still. A lookout watched beyond the bow. The helmsman followed the course. Other men waited near the forward deck, checked gear, or answered a call from aloft. Low conversation varied with the vessel and officer. The important work remained audible. A bell and an order crossed the deck. So did a repeated course, the wheels creak, and feet moving towards a line. Below, the same system appears as intervals of rest. A sailor who has already stood his turn at the wheel may return with stiff fingers and damp sleeves. He finds the familiar ladder, ducks beneath the beams, and reaches his hammock. Another man is already preparing to rise. Their movements overlap for only a few minutes. The exchange happens throughout the ship as each duty passes to the next person. The watch does not remain idle. A sailor feels a line where it bears against a pin. Another checks that boats and hatches remain secure. The pumps may be worked according to routine. The log receives observations. If a sail draws poorly, braces are adjusted. Each task ends with ropes coiled and the deck restored to readiness. Cold may deepen before dawn. Damp cloth loses warmth, and metal fittings feel sharp to the touch. Men find shelter only when their stations permit. A lookout cannot leave the assigned view. The helmsman remains at the steering position. Relief comes according to time rather than personal comfort. The bell makes that time audible across the dark vessel. Below, hammocks swing in slightly different rhythms as bodies shift. The air is warm but close. A sleeper may wake when a wave changes the hull's motion, then settle again. Another hears footsteps above and recognizes ordinary work. The absence of an urgent call carries its own reassurance. Routine sounds mean the watch remains in control. Off-watch rest can be interrupted by dreams of land, familiar rooms, or earlier voyages. There is no need for such dreams to form a story. They fade when the bell sounds or a neighbor rises. The immediate world returns through canvas, timber, and salt air. A sailor knows his place by touch before lantern light reaches him. At 4, the morning watch takes over. The sky remains dark at first, but dawn lies within the next 4 hours. The men coming on deck meet the night's coldest air. Stars begin to pale later in the watch. The eastern horizon gains a thin grey line. Ropes, sails, and faces slowly return from shadow. The sleeping deck also begins moving towards morning. Some men wake before the call and fold blankets within their hammocks. Others remain still until required. The cook or assistants prepare for early duties. Mess equipment comes within reach. The first smell from the galley may appear before full daylight, joining damp rope and timber below. As visibility improves, the lookout can distinguish sea from cloud more clearly. Officers examine sails and rigging in the returning light. Any damage hidden by darkness receives attention. The log continues its compact account. Wind, course, distance, and weather become another set of lines. The voyage advances through records as quietly as it advances through water. Near 8 bells, the ship is ready to change again. Hammocks come down, bedding is rolled, and the lower deck opens for cleaning. The morning watch prepares to eat or rest. The next group takes daytime stations. Nothing in the cycle marks a final ending. Every completed watch makes room for another. The sun rises behind cloud or into clear air, depending on the day. Canvas takes color above the deck. Bundled hammocks move towards their storage nettings. Water crosses the planks, and hatches stand open when weather allows. The same ship that held rows of sleeping men becomes a working vessel once more. Far astern, the harbour is now only a memory carried in letters and small objects. Ahead, the next landfall remains beyond sight. Between them lies the repeated life of the sailing ship. Bells divide the hours. Watches exchange places. Meals use measured stores. Repairs preserve canvas and timber. Hammocks appear each evening and leave again at dawn. The vessel continues under a steady wind. The lookout watches open water, and the helmsman holds the ordered course. Below, the last blanket is folded into its bundle. A broom begins its path across the boards. The bell's final stroke fades, then the new watch settles into its work while the hull moves quietly towards another day.